Welcome back to part 4. Let's kick off then without further delay. So there's a few things to catch you up on. I took some photos while I was dealing with all this stuff, and I'll drop them in here while I'm talking, just so you can catch up and see where we've got to. The seam has started to have its issues dealt with, and the brass cover for that torpedo launcher is in. All looking pretty good. The exhaust ports have been put in the right place. They're a deck too low on the original kit part, the way it comes out of the box. So that's been sorted out, and the green strawberry etch stuff is in there where they belong. So that's about it. It's just sort of basic sort of stuff. So I didn't waste video time covering that sort of thing. So what are we going to be up to next? Right, the royal we, me, I need to put these windows in place along this shoulder, both sides. And there's a row of windows. Well, they look like windows, and I'm sure that they are. Anyway, there's a row that go either side of this strip on the strongback. And there might be a few other little things that I need to deal with before I put the first sort of overcoat layer of primer, and then we can check everything else. Obviously, last time I corrected or started to correct these windows, and it's hard to tell what the state of those is at the moment until we get primer on there, and we'll be able to check all of the grid lines as well at the same time. So getting back to these windows, to give me this line, I'm going to use an old engineering piece of equipment. I mean old because they've been used forever, and the one I've got actually is old, but so I'm going to show you what I'm going to use. I need to do a little bit of a setup, so I'll be back in a second and explain what's going on. Right, this is what I'm going to use to give me a really good, accurate, level reference line on both sides of that dorsal to make sure the decks line up pretty well with each other. A little bit of overkill, a little bit of like a sledgehammer to crack a nut, but you know, like I said earlier, why be simple when you can make it complicated? Anyway, this is a digital height gauge. The engineers use them for all kinds of stuff that when they're measuring really accurately and marking layouts and measuring heights of bits of kit. But all I'm going to do is shove a pencil right in there instead of this scribe, and use it to maintain a really nice horizontal and repeatable line on my plastic kit part, which is not what it was designed or intended to be used for, but there you go. That's what it's doing now for the rest of its life. So happy retirement. So I've jammed that pencil that I was talking about earlier into that clamp, so they ain't going anywhere. So the idea is that we're going to position the tip of that pencil and then just gently slide the kit part along it and give myself a couple of sight lines. So while we're doing this, I might as well get the other grid lines in as well, and just so I can eyeball some stuff before I scribe them in. And I might end up putting the scribe tip into this contraption, but we'll see in a minute. So there's definitely one at the top of that torpedo launcher. So this is why I'm using this height gauge, because I can position the pencil really accurately, you know, way more accurately than we need to go, I guess. But so the pencil's thereabouts pointed at the right spot, so I'm just gonna snap the end of the pencil off and gently drag it back, making sure the kit part stays nice and flat to the table. And just forward again, and there we go. So that's a nice horizontal line. You can see that, that's cool. So before we go any further and disturb our positions, just going to turn the part round and do the same on this side. Now, all being equal, that should line up, which it does pretty well. So fair play to the kit makers back in the day. They've done a bang up job. So I haven't done much modifying of these parts really. They're just kind of slammed together the way they should have been out of the box. Not bad, not bad. Okay, Right, so we're going to do the next line down now. If you look at the reference photos, the next line isn't actually in the middle of that torpedo launcher deck. It's just a shade underneath it, so we'll go a little bit under, not too far. Somewhere there. Something like that. And we'll repeat it, repeat the process. We'll just try and keep the kit part nice and flat. I hope you can see this alright. I'm not really paying attention to what's in the viewfinder. And there we go. That's where they are. And then turn the part around again. And do the same. Start there. Again, look at that. That's pretty good. You know what that tells you, don't you? This is how they made these parts back in 1980, whatever the hell it was. Nearly 40 years ago, they were using these kind of tools when they were laying out their masters. Anyway, so there we go. I'm just going to have another quick recce at some more reference, see if there's anything else I need to scribe in while I've got this bit of kit out. And if there is, I'll do it. If not, we'll move on. There we have it. There's the windows in position. Both sides of the dorsal sort of shoulder there. I decided to cut some more windows out of this Tamiya masking sheet. It's good stuff. I prefer using it for like more detailed stuff. This vinyl is good, it's fine, but it leaves a little bit of a sticky residue, which I was finding when I was cleaning these windows out, but it's alright. I mean, I can live with it. I'll use these windows and they won't go to waste, but cutting more, I'll be using this Tamiya mask sheet, but that's just a bit of an aside. There's a couple of window sets there as well, right underneath where the main impulse engine will be, and they've just managed to sneak in there in that same deck line, as those ones, and have just snuck in underneath where that seam's going to end up being. So I thought I'd get them in at the same time, so that's all good. So all that's left to do now is to throw a load of primer around again, and see where some more areas may need some attention, with a little bit of cleanup. Obviously I'm going to mask all this stuff because I don't want the primer to get on there. So yeah, all good. So I'll shake some paint, throw it about a bit, and I'll be back in a bit. So see you soon. Well, what about that then? I'm really happy with that. The primer's really tied everything together. Yeah, it looks really good. These grid lines look really nice. The strongback's looking pretty accurate now, much better than it was. Those exhaust ports are nice. There's a little bit of tidying up needing doing there. These corrected windows along this rim are better than I thought they were, so there's just a little bit of work needed there, and then I can rescribe the line, so that's good. If you can see the dorsal windows there, pretty clean, happy with that. There's a little bit of touch-up needing doing around the kit sort of recess for this photo etch part. On both sides that's happened, so I mean that's no fault of the photo etch, that's purely down to the shape of the part when it's put together, so that's alright, I can deal with that. But yeah, good. So windows, now you can barely see them in the camera, I guess. They are very shallow, a little bit shallower than I was hoping, to be honest. So got a decision to make here. My initial intention, as I've already said, was once these were sort of made this way, I wouldn't be trying to mask them, because if I mask them right at the start of the project, by the time there's enough primer down to light block it, and then there's 4 or 5 more layers of paint going down for the base colours and the Aztec in and the clear coating and all the rest of it, the paint is going to be so thick that when you start to peel these masks off right at the end, they're actually going to start chipping away the paint in between where the frames are, in between the windows, it's really thin and they would definitely chip. It happened to me a couple of times, so I stopped doing it that way. As I said at the start of the project, my intention was just to get these recesses in the way they are now, and then just spray over the top without masking, and then scratch the paint off at the end. But I'm worried that if I go that route now, with these being so shallow, I might actually start to lose them. They might start to fill in and sort of disappear. So what I might have to do is try and get these light blocked as best as possible with maybe a layer or two more primer, and then mask them, continue with the normal painting, so then the mask is sort of halfway between the paint layers rather than right at the bottom of the paint layers, if that makes sense, and kind of coax them out at the end without breaking too many layers of paint. I'm not sure, I might have to do a bit of testing. But I think that's what I'm going to have to do, because I don't want to lose all these windows again by the time I've thrown loads of paint on there, and I think they might disappear. So yeah, might do a little bit of testing and just sort of mull it over, weigh my options. But yeah, all in all, that's looking really nice. If we just compare it to how the part comes out of the box, you can see how all the differences are starting to add up now. And this guy is looking really good. I'm really happy with that. So there we go. A little bit of head scratching to do with these windows. Weigh my options a little bit. And move on to the next in the meantime. So I'll be back. Right, head scratched, decision made, and this is where I've come down on it. So the options I had were bury my head in the sand and pretend it wasn't a problem, get my ass bitten a bit later down the line, or deal with it in one way or the other. And I was kind of toying with the idea of light blocking the windows before masking them, then putting these masks down on top of the light blocking, then painting all of the actual base colours and all the rest of it and clear coating it, and trying to mitigate some of the damage that is absolutely definitely going to happen, like at the end of the project when I'm peeling all these masks from underneath 6 or 7 layers of material. And I don't like the idea of that. So what I've decided to do is, as you can see, I've covered them all up again with a whole new set of masks that the plotter was nice and kind enough to cut for me again. And all I'm going to do is just sort of pretend I'm at the point where I was a couple of days ago and throw loads more primer down and build up that overall thickness a little bit higher. The mistake I definitely made was peeling up those masks a little bit too soon, and I hadn't built up enough of a height difference in the paint. But you know, you get what you get, and you don't know that until you peel them up. And so there we are. You're kind of kidding yourself if you think you're going to be able to nail everything in one go and never have to sort of take a step back and have another crack at something. Putting these masks down one at a time took forever, and it's something I definitely won't be repeating. So it's just kind of reinforced my whole approach of not masking these windows throughout the entire project, and yeah, and just going with the window scraping technique at the end. But never mind. It also afforded me a little bit of an opportunity to tidy this seam up a little bit more along the edge. It was a little bit untidy. Some of the paint layers and the paneling and all the rest of it later down the line is going to hide some of that unevenness, but it's best to try and get it as clean as you can while it's in the primer. So I've done that. And I haven't masked all of these windows for the dorsal because the paint thickness is a lot thicker, actually, like relatively speaking, than it is on this part. So I haven't had to do it on all of those, but I have masked windows that were particularly out of shape or that I didn't like the look of, or the ones that are going to be bombed a lot while I'm dealing with this lot. So these are all masked. These are still quite deep, but again, I may have to protect these in a layer or two's paint sort of time. I don't know, we'll have to see as it goes. and these are all starting to disappear a little bit, so I've masked those off. Again, some of these might start disappearing, and if they do, I'll start to protect them at that point. So yeah, that's all a long way of saying don't commit to a bad idea. Know when to call it quits and when to change approach and when to just sort of stop and have another crack at the same thing. So that's where we are. So I'm going to throw loads more paint around and get that thickness up a little bit higher, and we should be good to go. Now we're talking. That's much better. I've got plenty of primer on there now, so the paint is nice and thick. You see those windows are nice and clear. They're not going to be disappearing anytime soon, so good. The grid line got filled in a little bit with all of the extra primer being thrown onto it, but that was just a case of chasing it back out again with the scribe. No problems. Same process as before, so I didn't bother filming it. No sense going over it twice. And then it was sanded with some 800 grit paper, sandpaper, to get rid of the rough texture that's left by this car body primer. It's like a heavy bodied sort of filler primer. So yeah, it's all good to go. Nice. There's a good example here of this paint chipping that I keep banging on about. That guy, you see, he's got a bit of a belly on him, this one there. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm trying to avoid. And this only gets worse with more paint that gets built up onto it. So we're only at the prime stage at the minute. Yeah, granted, I've put a lot of primer on there, but there's going to be more paint going on the top, so that's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And if you imagine if that would happen between there or, you know, any of these window frames, it's just something that I'm desperately trying to avoid. Particularly when you imagine that if that happens after all of this has been really detail painted, and then it's a case of having to try to repair all that, and it's very difficult. So yeah, that's what we're trying to avoid. The shoulder windows are in, and you see it in shadow, bit in shadow there. They're good. Those scribe lines were put in using the surface gauge, but rather than jamming the pencil in the clamp, I put the actual scribe back in there and gave me my nice crisp lines, nice and straight and parallel, and they register with each other. So that's cool. Happy with those. So I think we're good to go. I think we're in good shape now to move on to the next stage. It's been a lot of faffing around with this part, but it's important because, again, another comparison to how the part came out of the box, you can see all those little subtle changes are all starting to add up now. And we're starting to see a part that's looking much more close to the way that the original 6-footer looks. So it's all adding up. It's a lot of work, but it is all adding up, and I think it's going to make a difference in the end. So cool. I think that'll do it. I think we'll leave it there, and I'll start thinking about how I'm going to put some lights in this thing. Show you what I've got planned for the secondary hull, like the lower part at least, and yeah, start throwing some voltage around like it's going out of fashion. So come back for that. I'll see you in part 5. Thanks for watching.